Here for a work session regarding the 2023 budget. I, like my colleagues, have had time to reflect on last Thursday's work session. I was able to review the various budgets and hone in on what I think is critical. I think I can speak for my colleagues when I say this board supports the justice system, law enforcement, and community safety. But now I have to speak for myself. When I reviewed the various budgets and presentations, I came away with an appreciation of the various office holders and the respective budgets. For example, in reviewing Auditor Galloway's requests, I found them to be reasonable and I support them. I do have a concern though, and it's a big one. In reviewing all their requests, I keep going back to that day last August when Prosecutor Colson came to our meeting, and I dare say unannounced, with a number of his assistant prosecutors. Prosecutor Colson stated his office was in crisis. When we heard from Prosecutor Colson and a number of his assistants, I heard them loud and clear. We helped Mr. Colson with a Band-Aid. Now we must deliver a real fix. Prosecutor Colson has requested an additional $703,000 for his 2023 budget. Speaking for myself, I fully support Prosecutor Colson's request for an additional $703,000 for his 2023 budget. Commissioner Regovich, I say, what say you? Do you support Prosecutor Colson's request for the $703,000?
Without knowing how these proceedings are going, I thought we can go through each budget at each time, and if we need Mr. Colson to come up and say, because I also heard Mr. Colson say they won't spend it all this year, is that something we could do progressively? So I have questions to those that I'd love to be answered. So what can we give them now to make them whole and then move on forward? So
I do recall Commissioner Colson clearly stating he needed to have a baseline. And as you pointed out, I do believe he stated words to the effect of, and he is with us, that his intention was to not spend it all at once. And that does have to do, I believe, with retention as well as recruitment. And recruitment takes time.
Absolutely.
So I believe that was the context in which he was saying he's not going to spend it all. But he does have an immediate need. Very good. Same question. What say you, sir?
Mr. President, I don't think your math is correct. If you look at Prosecutor Colson's request, both for new personnel and for the new pay rate structure, it's certainly considerably more than $703,000. And I've had this conversation with our budget director, Mike Matus, and he confirmed to me that if we were to give every position that Mr. Colson has asked for, as well as the increases in pay rate, it would be an over $1 million request. That's not to say that that is not reasonable, but I don't believe that every single thing he's asked for, including PERS and health care, amounts to simply $703,000. So we need to look at his request holistically. Just saying $703,000 is not actually answering his full request. Now, there's the added complication that Commissioner Regovich said, that those hires would obviously not take place immediately. And so all this funding isn't immediately required. There's also the added complication that Prosecutor Colson added, which is that he's not going to immediately give raises to every employee. They're going to be progressing up the scale as they progress in their careers. But nonetheless, I don't believe that $703,000 is a panacea or a number that Mr. Colson cited. I think it was your attempt to quantify his number, but I don't think that it's close to what he ultimately has stated. And if I'm mistaken, I'm happy to be corrected, but I don't think that $703,000 encapsulates everything that the prosecutor is requesting.
I simply refer back to the document we received during the budget hearing for the prosecutors. The heading on it was Review of 2023 Salary Appropriations. The ask was $897,594.54. Again, rounding things out. Backed out what is referred to as Exhibit E. Reduce over-reliance on Crime Lab, again referred to as Exhibit E, of $98,122.56. Backing that out, And working through those numbers, it rounded out to $703,000. And this was based off of the last presentation at last work session on the budget. I do believe I verified twice during that discussion that $703,000, again, plus benefits, again, to be completely candid, but we do have Prosecutor Colson. Prosecutor is $703,000 plus benefits, what you're asking for.
That's correct. It would be more than the 703,000 because it would have to add the benefits, but it's exactly $703,447. And I would be giving out raises immediately to everybody. I would not be giving out the full amount because we want to start a career program, and it would be when somebody gets transferred to a new division as their duties increase, then they would be given more. But it would take this amount in order to fully complete it, what we need in the office. And so, and while I'm up here, I would like to say that that 703,000 did not include the additional 98,000 that I was talking about that we need to start returning back to the crime lab and not spending the crime lab money inappropriately. When I think of what you can do, and all three of you have said you want to support law enforcement. When I think of what you can do, the only thing you can really do as commissioners to support law enforcement is to make sure that we have the proper funding, because that's what your job is when it comes to supporting law enforcement, to make sure we have the proper funding to run the office. And I can tell you this is what we need. I've been doing this a long time. I wouldn't be telling you this if I didn't need it. Think of this. We have, and the sheriff, we all recognize his people are underpaid. But let me just give you an example. A sheriff's deputy who doesn't even require a bachelor's degree, doesn't even require a college degree, starts at $71,000. You're asking me to start assistant prosecutors with a Juris Doctor degree at $66,000, less than the sheriff's deputy starting. That's what you're asking me to do. That's what the money that you're giving me to do right now. And that has been an increase just recently from our negotiations from earlier this year at the end of last year. So this is what I need to run the office properly. This is what's required. I know what's required. I know what's going to take to keep the office, to keep the people I have. I know what's out there in the community. I know what's out there. I mentioned this last night, but I want to mention it again. I can't hire people. I can't hire good people. I'm having a great difficulty in finding people who want to be prosecutors and then finding good people. Last week I interviewed this young lady. Man, top of her class, really. She was so good. When we interview people, we do it as a team. I have my two chief assistants, criminal and civil, and my office administrator, and we just knew this was a star. And I offered her a job right on the spot. I didn't want to lose her. I said, I've got $66,000 I can start you with. She says, well, let me think about it, because she's interviewing other places. Well, she got a lot more money somewhere else. I couldn't get her. And that's happening to me over and over and over again, if I can even get him in. Because I'm advertising, and I'm advertising the starting salary 66, it's even hard to get him in to the office to interview. So I'm not going to keep the people I have, and I'm not going to be able to hire new people. My civil division is in crisis. I have right now 3 attorneys, one of them the chief, and that simply isn't enough to get the work done. I need this. This is what it's going to take to have the prosecutor's office run properly to protect Lake County. And so, as you said, you want to help us in law enforcement. This is what is needed, and this is what I'm asking you for the prosecutor's office and to help the county. I don't know. I'll answer any other question, but that is the correct amount: $703,447 plus benefits. You're right. So if you start adding the benefits, it's more than that. I agree.
So prosecutor Chuck, I want to reiterate, even though we've already had this conversation, for the benefit of anybody watching, as well as for the benefit of the Board of Commissioners, so that our memory is refreshed, as you're looking at your priorities, because ultimately we want to make sure, if we can't fund absolutely everything, we understand this is the most important, this is the second most important, this is the third. The most important thing to you today is to be able to increase the pay scales of your current prosecutors. That's what I've heard from you.
That's
The
correct.
second most important thing is to be able to hire new prosecutors to make sure you have enough positions.
That's correct.
The third most important thing is to hire administrative staff in support of those prosecutors.
In support of the office, that's
Yes.
correct, yes.
And then the fourth on the list is this 100,000 reduction in crime lab.
That's
If I'm just to state your priority, I want to make sure that I'm being fair in stating your priorities.
That's exactly correct, you're right.
Thank you.
Mr. Colson,
Yes, sir.
is that number 703? Is that you will fully spend that this year, or you don't know because of what you have to hire and how long that'll take?
Yes, I don't know. The likelihood, I've done this on a yearly basis. We're already 3 months into it. So in that sense, it wouldn't, I was doing this for 12 months, we're 3 months into it. So that's going to reduce the amount for this year. But next year, it would be the full amount. Plus, this would include hiring some new people. That will take some time, so there will be a reduction there. I do agree with that. But we're not talking about a significant or substantial, and if I don't spend it, that's great. But this is what I'm going to need, and then some of it, when I say there's going to be, we've got to raise the salaries, the beginning salaries right away, so I can hire people. We've got to do that. Then what that creates the boomerang effect. I've got to raise other people. So everybody would be given an increase in salary immediately. I'm talking about now the attorneys.
Your existing staff.
Yes, the existing staff. They would. So most of that is going to be spent, but 100% of it, no, because we're 3 months into it, and I'm doing this on a yearly basis.
And my reason for asking is we're going to be doing this again next year. But we look budget year to year with some long-term planning. And this year, as you well know, is the ask has never been greater. So maybe we're trying to sharpen our pencil a little bit to get us through this year, then look into next year and next year. So that's the only reason I'm.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. So if you took that $3,000 and you prorated, divided by 12, and then times the 9 months we have left, that would be exactly what I need for this year.
Okay.
So just to be abundantly clear, for budgeting purposes, because today we have to give clear guidance to our finance budget director so that we can have a budget prepared for formal action on Thursday, 703,000 plus benefits, that's the working number that you need to see for your 2023 budget.
That would be on a yearly basis, yes.
And I would like to talk about priorities. I appreciate quantifying them to 3 key and 1 subset that I think is debatable. But the 3 that I do not believe are debatable, and I believe they were quantified as retain, recruit, and staff support. Although they are priorities and offered up in that order, one does not have precedent over the other. You can't survive. Your crisis is not limited to any one of those 3. If you take away the retention, you're in trouble because you're losing skilled, trained people that you know, that you trust. Recruiting, if you're not recruiting the next generation, the next crew, the ones to be able to pick up the added workload, the ones to replace those who are naturally rotating out of the system through retirement, we're in trouble. And something that you've made abundantly clear over my now 7 years here in the Office of Commissioner, staff support. Without staff support, your attorneys, they're in trouble.
I always say the staff, especially the legal secretaries, they're the engine that runs, that keeps the place going, obviously. But we're having so much, our workload is just increasing. And I keep telling you, it's not like it was. The world has changed. And the workload that we have in the discovery area, we are required by law to give this discovery to the Defense Council as soon as possible. The amount of work involved in that now has exponentially increased due to the many things I've told you about over and over again. So everybody's workload has increased. And we just have to have the staff support to do it. I mean, this is what we need.
So the big question right now is $703,000 to the appetite of this board, as described by Prosecutor Colson?
That's correct.
And
Now, keep saying that on a yearly basis.
yes.
Yes.
Plus benefits.
Plus benefits, yes.
And today is the day, this is the venue for this discussion, because we're allowed to, we're in a public meeting, we're here to
Well,
say.
I do want to say, you have to make your decision in public. You can't say, okay, we had our meeting and go off in private and then have talk, or if you pass around a sheet, even there's case law that says you can't even do that. I mean, this is the time to I know you're going to talk about the sheriff's office, but I have to point out that it's a team effort. Without the good law enforcement, without good deputies on the street, without good corrections officers, he can't run his operation. And if he doesn't have good deputies, I don't get the good cases that are coming into our office. I mean, it's a team, so you need to look at this globally for law enforcement as far as I'm concerned. And this is important. And I'm telling you, the world is changing out there. I see it. I've been doing this continuously in Lake County for over 48 years now, prosecuting cases. And I know what it was like in the past. I'm in the business. I'm talking to other prosecutors. I'm talking to police chiefs. I know what is out there. And well, Mayor, you've dealt directly with the police chief. You were the safety director, so you know some of the things that are coming up. And it's getting worse. It is not getting better. And I probably shouldn't make this comment, but I'm going to make it. Nothing will help Lake County. Last week, you appropriated $275,000 for an arch in, I think, in Madison, because you want that to attract business. Nothing will destroy business quicker than crime. Nothing will reduce property values quicker than crime. And so that's, if you really want to help businesses, you need to make sure that I'm here telling you, I'm telling the county, this is what we need. And it's not like it was in the past. Things are changing. They have changed. They've changed substantially in the less than 5 years. And this is what we need. But we're not going to keep our good people. We're not. And I got to hire people. And I've got to get good people. And I don't have enough of them. I'm short-handed. And so this is what we need.
Gentlemen?
What do you think it takes to hire a new person at starting salary? I can't answer that because I will give you my best guess. $75,000 is starting. And that would put me only $4,000 a year more than the starting salary of a deputy. But they have Juris Doctor degrees. So I'm not asking for a lot here.
And in fairness, Ashtabula County, I believe, is starting at $75,000. Ashtabula County, a county that is infamous for making deals. I know Prosecutor Colson is very passionate about his work. Deals do not get cut. Crimes are prosecuted. Our prosecutor prosecutes. I don't know if you want to add to that, but that's what.
Well, I would be repeating myself again. I don't want to do that too much. I have a tendency to do that anyway. But the truth is, we cannot maintain the standards of prosecution that we have done in the past unless I can keep my good people and hire more good people. We cannot do that. That's what I am telling you. Lake County will suffer from it in the system, and that's where we are.
Mr. President,
Sir.
I just have to say, because many members of the Ashtabula County Prosecutor's Office are actually Lake County residents, I don't think that I would characterize our office in a negative way. They're a county that we work very closely with on economic development. We obviously share a border, and so we have to work together in so many regards. I want to make it very clear that we have a great working relationship with Ashtabula and a lot of respect for all of their elected officials, public employees, and residents.
I would suggest to you that all you need to do is go talk to all of the judges in Ashtabula County and all of the police chiefs in Ashtabula County, and you will get a different picture of the prosecutor's office. I would suggest to you that.
And I will avail myself of putting a little finer point on it. When a child rapist, murderer of an infant gets an 8-year deal because the prosecutor did not feel maybe I should edit what I'm about to say. I do not believe that Prosecutor Colson or any member of his staff would allow a child rapist murderer to get an 8-year deal and say thank you for your time.
Okay. I don't want to, to me Ashtabula is irrelevant really, except that what we do in Lake County is substantially different, substantially more. And it's a standard Lake County citizens have come accustomed to. And I am telling you, I cannot keep it up without the proper personnel.
To be on point, the ask is for budgeting purposes, $703,000 plus benefits for the 2023 budget. That would be the clear guidance that our finance budget director would need in order to work the math to fill in all the boxes so that we'd be able to take a formal action on Thursday.
Correct.
Gentlemen, today's the day we have to lock some things down. We've got to give our budget finance director clear guidance today.
Mr. President, I want to strenuously disagree. We vote at commissioners' meetings and only at commissioners' meetings, period. We have discussions at work sessions, and I think residents would be frightened and troubled if we essentially take votes here. I think we have to have a thorough discussion. I think we can discuss whatever we please, but I am very uncomfortable with the implication that we're going to somehow take an unofficial vote here. I don't care whether it's quote-unquote legal. No resident anticipates their commissioners are going to vote at a work session. Period.
Commissioner Plechnik, I find it unsettling that you would say this, one, at this dais, two, before our prosecutor, and you, knowing full well, given your expertise in law, the difference between discussions, deliberations, and decisions, and formal actions. No less than 3 times today I said the formal action will take place on Thursday. If we give guidance, which we must do, to our budget finance director, that is in and of itself the definition of a decision. This is a deliberative body. This is the public time and place for this to take place. So let us be abundantly clear. What we are doing here is fully proper, which is why we are recording this and broadcasting it live. Thank you. So, Mr. Matus, do you have a working number that we can proceed with? If we're going to carve it up on Thursday, we carve it up on Thursday.
I
Your microphone, sir.
heard your stance on the auditor's office and the prosecutor's office, yes.
Auditor's office, just to be clear, I was speaking for myself, but thank you. All right, I guess the next toughest nut to crack is going to be our sheriff's office. We've heard very clearly that we are losing deputies and corrections officers, as well as others. I believe if we work the numbers, our sheriff was asking for, I believe, 1.2 to 1.5 million. I believe the discussion we just had regarding the prosecutor's office directly applies to our sheriff's office. Again, I say, what say you, gentlemen? We've got to put some working numbers together for Thursday.
Mr. President,
Sir,
very clearly, our chief has been working incredibly hard on behalf of the county to find a fair resolution that adequately compensates our deputies and respects the great work they do for us, while at the same time fitting within our budget. This is a union process, and one that we are not a decider in. We're a participant in that process. And we're trusting our sheriff, and in particular his chief deputy, to represent the whole county in those negotiations. So I have every faith and confidence in both of them that they're going to arrive at that number. We can only guess and speculate as to what that ultimate cost will be. Now, our budget director, Mike Matus, has plugged in a number that is likely not enough to cover the full amount of the negotiations, but we can't really speculate. And to some extent, if we try to put in a number as a placeholder, we're essentially telling the union and the sheriff this is what we're deciding, when in reality, we're not a decider, we're a participant in this legal negotiation. And so I want to reiterate my faith and trust in our chief deputy and his work, and I'm confident that he'll update us as best he can, but I don't believe there's been a resolution yet. Now, when there is, we'll know exactly what that number we need to plug into the budget may be, and we can amend the budget to reflect that number. In fact, we'll have to amend the budget to reflect that number. But we can't sit here and decide at this work session what a union negotiation is going to result in. We have to go through the negotiation, and once again, there's no one more qualified to do that than our sheriff and his chief. So if they have an update to provide us, that would be helpful. We'd certainly be appreciative. If they feel that that update needs to happen confidentially, that's fine too. But ultimately, they're negotiating on behalf of the county, and we're waiting to hear back on those results. I believe that they're keeping our budget director and our county administrator apprised, but I'd be mistaken if it's completed. I think they're still in negotiations.
I appreciate your sentiments. As our sheriff has said clearly in the past, and our prosecutor stated very succinctly today, this board's support of law enforcement comes in the form of budgets. A budget, I dare say, is a reflection of our values. I have made it abundantly clear that I value our people. At our discussions numerous times, we have heard, who are we losing staff to? Again, same argument as the prosecutor's office. We have looked at Willoughby, we have looked at Mentor, we have looked at Geauga County. To say that putting a working number in a budget would put us at a disadvantage for union negotiations, I would be shocked and deeply disappointed if our union members, our staff, don't take the time to watch these meetings. And there is something in the state of Ohio called binding arbitration. And an arbitrator is not going to look at the sheriff's department budget, as you so correctly pointed out, holistically. They will look at all monies available. We have indicated that we value our people, and that we are willing to work with our people, and that we value their market value. We've talked about market adjustments at length. We have also said we want stability looking forward, sustainability, percentage increases in contracts that make sense over the 3 years, corrections now. We've made that abundantly clear. Again, we need to give our budget director something to work with. And our sheriff has told us loud and clear who we are competing with. Sheriff, you're here. Have I misstated anything? Is there anything you feel we should add to this discussion?
Obviously, we're in budget negotiations, so we have 8 bargaining units that we're working with. I will say this, that very proud of the staff. Obviously, there's this big market out there, and it is a combination between an organizational work ethic and a value of an organization, and also in terms of some type of financial compensation for the job someone does. And so I think both the unions and our administration is trying to balance that together. And I think we're headed in the right direction in terms of resolving these here over the coming weeks, and to be able to give you a more reflective number. I will say this, whether it's the prosecutor's office or the sheriff's office, everybody in these organizations realize the demand they have in terms of the financial resources of the county. It's a lot to fund a justice system. And so it's trying to balance that out. And one thing Mr. Colson did say, and I think it bears saying here, is the crime rate and the success of bringing criminals to justice through our court system and making a clear statement that crime's not acceptable here has a big bearing. And we've said this in terms of business coming in terms of business profiting and doing well in our community, in terms of homeowners coming in. So there's a lot to balance here. But I believe it's important, and we do appreciate your consideration of the request before you.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, anything for Sheriff?
Mr. President,
Sir.
I would just say 2 things. First of all, you're a true diplomat. And second, I want to thank you for making our county so safe that even in a community, in a neighborhood that's been characterized at these meetings by other elected officials as one of the least safe or the poorest or the most difficult neighborhoods, ironically enough, where I live, I have walked up and down my street and every surrounding street over the years that I've lived there and never once felt unsafe. And I know that that is a great partnership that the Sheriff's Office, the Willoughby Hills Police Department, the Prosecutor's Office, and all of law enforcement have done, that I feel 100% safe in my own home, despite the fact that statistically it might be one of the most dangerous, quote unquote, in Lake County. Still, nonetheless, we are kept safe by your hard work and your efforts. So it's not lost on me personally what you've accomplished. Because when you can walk around at night with your dog and have zero concern, that is the amalgam of so much hard work and so much sacrifice by so many people. So thank you.
Thank you.
So under the theme of working numbers to give to our budget finance director. What do we do?
Mr. President,
Sir.
having lived through several negotiations with FOP, I say we have that working number. I believe that was what, $1 million?
I think 750 is what Mr. May just put in the
750.
budget.
750 is what currently in, and I've worked with Chief Izzo and Sheriff Leon Bruno about that. The goal was $1 million at the beginning. I think that's ever changing. I just talked to Chief Izzo last week. They're in hopes that some of the overtime will be decreased by that. That's the amount to be determined. So the 750 was the number, plus hopefully the reduction in overtime to get to the $1 million. And talking, like I said, with Chief Izzo last week, it appears it could be upwards of 1.2 million. So like I said, currently in the budget, there's 750,000. So, correct.
And just to put a fine point on this for my colleagues, anybody viewing this, the 750 also included a reduction in overtime of how much?
Well, in essence, the 750 did not take into consideration the reduction in overtime.
Can you say that again?
The 750 did not take into account the reduction in overtime. That's just what we put in addition to what the budgeted amount was, just based on discussions with Chief Izzo over the course of time. Like I said, it remains to be determined until the contract is settled.
And how much reduction in overtime will we anticipate?
That's to be determined. Like I said, with that, we accounted for about 250,000, but that's, it all depends on how much overtime that goes in with that, with the corrections officers and so forth. And that part of the budget is just the COs and the admins, not the road deputies, et cetera, central dispatch.
Where the discussions were in terms of overtime, we were as far down as 20 or more corrections officers in the jail. And it's not so much those are just extra people. There are posts in the jail that have to be filled by law. And so when those aren't filled, you have to be looking for staff at the same time filling those. So we expended almost $960,000 in overtime just for the jail last year because we were 20 down, you had people in training, and it takes 2 months to train somebody just initially to go on their own. We're running corrections academies at the same time to bring in new people, trying to advertise and not getting enough applicants because of some of the pay rates. We believe that fully staffed and appropriately compensated, and we're not saying, we're not looking to a place like Franklin County that pays its corrections officers $98,000 a year. That's not what we're asking. For this area, for who we're competing against, if we can get that, the pay rate there, we can maintain the staff. We're not going to lose the staff, have that turnover. And when you don't have that turnover, we believe, as Mr. Maida said, we can probably reduce 25 to 35 or more % in terms of that overtime budget, that we won't have to expend on all that. It further increases our knowledge and experience and reduces our liability in terms of operating a facility. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank
And
you.
Mr. President, I would add that when I was a Willoughby Hills councilman, we experienced the same problem where letting our fire department staff diminish to the point where everyone was working excessive overtime. We actually spent more on overtime than we would have had we added multiple staff. And unfortunately, it took far too long to convince the mayor to hire more firefighters. And it cost the city a lot of money. And frankly, it wore out our people because at a certain point, it's nice to earn money, but if you never have vacation, if you're working back to back to back shifts, you're not at your best. And no one wants to be in a job such as a first responder or law enforcement where you're not at your best because you have to be 100% in dangerous life and death situations. So when you see high overtime, it's a cost issue, but it's also a safety issue because you want people fresh, rested, and ready to go.
Just to note, and you can't take, because every section of the year is different in terms of people on vacations, holidays, and what have you, but right now our overtime is down about 45% in the first 3 months of this year over where it was last year at this time. So that's an indicator of now that we're probably down 3 or 4 corrections officers right now that we're looking to fill. We just lost another person to Geauga County supervisor, so we have to fill those positions too. But it's an indicator of being fully staffed and what that changes the overtime budget.
And I think this is a healthy discussion to have because people are trying to appreciate how our budgeting process works. When you have hourly employees who are eligible for overtime, how investing more money actually causes corresponding reductions in cost. We've heard the ask then plus benefits, but here's an ask with deductions because of cost savings. So again, this is not a linear process. There's an awful lot of moving parts. So this is a healthy conversation that we're having. Mr. Regovich, sir.
Have full confidence in Sheriff Lambrino and Chief Izzo on their tactic and what they're using in negotiations. I think we're going to have to live with the result, what that is, and hopefully it's not arbitration. I think they're going down the right path. We don't get there, so we'll agree upon the 3-year contract when they get to that portion, which feels like it might be sooner rather than later, which would be nice. But those are, I think, we're going to have to adjust the budget no matter what we do.
Yeah, we've had very productive sessions. I think we're all on the same page. I'm probably being a little optimistic when I say this, but I think we could have agreements by the end of April pretty much across the board.
I'm being careful because I don't want to say something here on public record that's going to hinder their ability to negotiate. So it's
And if I may add, just piggyback on the sheriff, I think especially in our correction staff, we have many employees watching and waiting, I think, to make decisions on their future based on where the negotiations go and what this contract looks like. The sheriff has been loud and clear on what we think we need to retain our staff and keep the good people that we have working for us. So it's extremely important to us to come to what both sides think are fair agreement on this, because they're watching, and we still have some that are leaving, and I think we would we'd be remiss to not think more would leave if we don't compensate them what they think is fair. But I think the path that we're on, I'm very optimistic that by the end of April we will have tentative agreements in place to present to the board.
I believe your path and your tactic that you're using is wise,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way to retain people and to gather news. So,
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, though, just to be plain, we're negotiating from a glass house. There are no secrets here. We are fortunate, though, that we do have a culture that encourages people to stay. We just need to pay them a proper amount of money because they do need to be able to live, work, and raise a family here. So those are all factors. But if I'm hearing loud and clear, we have the $750,000 plugged in. That was the last adjustment from our last meeting. There is anticipation of some potential savings. It's a working number that we can move forward to Thursday. Is that the direction that we can give our budget finance director for our formal action that will take place in a public meeting at our regularly scheduled commissioners meeting?
I believe that's what the budget director already had in the budget before we started this discussion.
So that's a yes, we're okay to stay with that?
I think we're gonna leave it in their hands, and we'll have that decision later on the top. But I like the way we're going. So,
Sheriff, you're okay with that? Okay, we're grinding through this. There was an ask from our soil and water for an additional $33,000. All $33,000 were eligible for dollar-for-dollar matching. I know that was one of the discussions that was somewhat under consideration. Have you gentlemen had a chance to give some thought to that one? Are we okay with advancing the $33,000 to our soil and water?
is that something budgeted for?
We budgeted 210, the same amount last year. The 33 was in addition to the 210 that was, so that would be an adjustment up in the budget.
And again, it's a dollar for dollar match. It's annualized and it has to be, as I understand it from Dan Donaldson, the director, it has to be memorialized in order to be eligible to receive those matching funds. So by our committing to it, he would then be able to point to that in order to qualify for those matching dollars. He also indicated that at that amount, he believes his department would be stable for the next 3 years. I feel I should add that to the discussion.
Mr. President, I don't
Sir.
think anyone has stated why an additional $33, ultimately $66,000 is necessary in that department. We've heard that there'd be matching state funds, but we're still paying for it dollar for dollar. If it were just free money, if they were giving it to us, period, there would be little debate. But I haven't heard one statement, my department will be stable. That doesn't tell me, are we going to be handing out raises? Are we going to buy a bunch more soil and water? No one has actually stated a reason for why this money is necessary. So, absent that, I don't really see that this board has the information to act.
I hate to do this again. Could somebody have Jennifer bring in the page-and-a-half document from Soil and Water? I believe in that document it indicated that there's one full-time equivalent grant employee. I believe that was the 10,000, which would then be doubled to 20,000. But I'll hold on waiting for the document to find its way back to us.
So they'd hire more people then?
I believe that's, I don't want to say hire, I think it might be a retain, if I remember correctly. Jason, you would agree? That's a retain?
But retaining someone who was previously paid for with outside funds?
Well, this is where Mr. Madish usually says supplement, not supplant, and all those lovely details. We could also, Jason called Dan Donaldson, see if he's available. Would you mind doing that, sir?
The interest of time, can we move ahead and then circle back?
Sure, let's circle back to our auditor. You've heard my position. Are we okay with the auditor's requests? That way we can give our budget finance director clear guidance on our auditor's office.
I believe his requests were not out of the ordinary. There was nothing that stuck out to me that seemed to be excessive.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleischner?
He had a rather small ask compared to other departments, and he was able to justify each line item.
Thank you. Mr. Madish, you have what you need to work with checking off the box for the auditors.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if you were on mic, but I heard a yes. So. Okay, we're grinding through it. Well, I guess while we're here, let's talk about our engineer's office. You heard me at our last couple of discussions talking about increased revenues associated with investment dollars. Those were unbudgeted dollars. Our county engineer has been talking about several issues of great concern. One of the big ones that's near and dear to those of us on the east side are roads and bridges that are closed. And there are other areas that are in imminent points of imminent failure. Engineer Gills, I believe the desire was to have you discuss this, so the floor and the microphone is yours, and we'll come back to the soil and water discussion.
I'm not used to being here. I'm used to being over there. First of all, I thank you for entertaining my request. This is the first time in over 22 years that I've come and before the commissioners and asked for money. And the reason I am here today asking for money is because of what one would call basically over the last 2.5 years a perfect storm. We have several roads closed. Well, we have 2 roads closed now. One could be, an additional one that could be closed at any time. We've had 2 major wall failures on Madison Avenue, which is a very substantial retaining wall. They were very expensive. The first project failure that was part of the road resurfacing project did receive some federal funds, but not enough. The failure at the beginning of the construction added to the cost. It increased the cost of that particular project by $500,000. That was not covered by anything other than our office. Presently, the Madison Avenue retaining wall had a second failure, and we had to do that on an emergency because it was pretty bad, and we did it on time material. The wall is now finished. It is unpaid for. The total cost was $1.3 million. We have paid $500 to date. We owe $800,000. Ford Road is closed. It needs a complete replacement. It is a major slide and it's a mess. We are going through the process of design and moving forward, but the biggest problem is money. It's a $2.5 million project at this particular time. Payne Road retaining wall and culvert is also closed. It is a serious emergency. It has been closed for a while, and that particular project is a $200,000 project. Williams Road, in order to solve that slope failure, it is a local emergency and could be closed at any time, is another $870,000. We also have a St. Clair Bridge deck repair that has been bad for about 5 years. It keeps getting large holes in it. We keep patching it, and they don't last very long. They fall through. It needs a complete deck replacement. We have hired an engineer to do the design. That's $1.1 million. It needs to be done immediately. And there are several other projects. In that light, has everybody got a copy of my list of projects? Jason? Okay. All right. So, and there's the other projects on there, some bridges and things that are coming, we already have match money for, or not match money, we have federal funds for, but no match money. So, all in all, let me explain to you exactly how my budget operates. My budget operates presently on about $1 million a year for capital improvements. That capital improvements are basically anything that is not fundable by the federal government and match money for the federal government. In the past year and a half, due to increase in costs, that has been reduced by almost a third. From 125 to probably right now a little less than that particular million. Excuse me. That covers my normal everyday year-to-year projects that I normally do. Some years I'm able to do a little more, some years a little bit less, basically, depending on the particular year. But to add to the problem, we have a Blair Road retaining wall that is also failing. It has not failed yet. It is pending failure, and will probably will have to be addressed probably in the next 24 months. That particular project is a $2.4 million project. As you can see from the list in front of you, there is a lot of work to do and no money. All of these projects are over and above the $1 million I spend a year. Madison Avenue needs to be paid for. Ford Road, Payne Road needs to be built. Williams needs to be built, and these need to be built now. The 2 roads that are closed have been closed over a year. It creates serious problems for the residents and for the safety forces in answering calls. I do not have the money for these projects. We have looked under every rock. I have applied for federal funds. One of the problems with Payne Road and Ford Road and Williams Road is they are not on the federal system. If they're not on the federal system, federal funds aren't available. CEO funds are not available. NOACA funds are not available. The best thing we can do is go to Public Works. We have applied for Public Works for the Ford Road project. At this particular time, they don't have any money for emergency. We do have Public Works emergency money on Callow Road that covers about $400,000. So from that standpoint, we've looked under every rock. We have asked the state legislature to give us money. They originally thought we might come up with $2 million for us. However, that's been shot down. The House has indicated that they do not fund these kind of projects. So they will not go along with our $2 million. So we are left with a large hole. The only way that hole can be filled is with money. And I'm sorry to say that, and I'm sorry to be here to ask you for it, but I have absolutely no choice. I'll take questions.
Well, you've heard me talk about life safety issues. I'm going to be blunt. When you have roads and bridges that are closed, that's a problem. We've got Blair Road. I think that's the detour route, and that's only one lane, or no, I'm sorry, yeah, Blair Road, one lane?
Yeah, well, no, Blair Road is open.
Williams is the one.
Williams Road is down to one lane. But the problem with Blair Road, if we have to close that, the only way you can get into Leroy Township is through Vrooman Road, in and out of it. So, coming north and south from north.
Madison Fire, Madison Township Police, they're actually also going through Geauga County, through Thompson to get to places in Madison.
Well, it makes a very difficult situation for everybody. The other side of the whole thing is, like I said, while we're looking for funding, we have generated enough funding to get the professional services going, because these two particular roads projects are over water, which means we have to deal with the core, which is a slow process. So we've got all that started. We are moving forward. We will soon be ready to go forward on the construction of these projects, with the exception of the money that is necessary.
And right now you are showing a shortfall of $16,900,000.
Well, that's the overall shortfall. The immediate shortfall is probably about nine. I have $9,632,000.
Actually, it's $9,632,300. Don't short yourself that $300.
Look,
Not
sorry.
that I'm keeping math on
No,
this.
oh, okay.
But our work does get checked. But those are what we're going to call the category 2 on your list. That would be Madison Avenue retaining wall, of which is $800,000 outstanding. Ford Road bridge replacement, $2,500,000. Payne Road retaining wall and culvert, $2 million. And I believe Blair Road.
Williams Road is the next one at 870.
Sure, I'm just walking down your list, that's
yeah,
how I got to
yeah,
9
okay.
million, which tells me that I may not be taking the order you want, but our numbers seem to be agreeing.
Yay.
Just getting it out there, brother. I think it's a reasonable ask. I think the fact that we have been blessed with good investments, and again, these are unbudgeted dollars, I think that's an opportunity to put unbudgeted dollars towards an immediate safety issue. So I think you've made a strong case, but gentlemen, it takes two of us.
Anyone who asks me for $10 million gets a hell no. Not just a no, a hell no. We have not finished our budget. We have not yet addressed the needs of all the departments, and we have not yet costed out the jail project. When all that is done, and I want to do that with all due speed, and we're going to be voting on our budget this Thursday, we will see what monies are left. But you're talking about a projected surplus in interest income without considering the added cost of bonds. If there are any emergency projects in the engineer's office, I recommend that we work with the budget director and bond counsel. But if there's not an emergency, then we need to go through the full budget process. We need to know how much money we have. Spending money we don't even have is not something I'm comfortable with. It's very easy to say, this is important, let's spend 10 million here, let's spend 10 million there, but then we're in a crisis. Then we really do have to lay people off and make severe budget cuts if it turned out that you overestimated revenue in one line or another. We live and die by sales tax, which can change on a day-to-day basis. Property tax tends to be more stable, but even that's based on collections. And even interest income relies on whether or not the bonds ultimately pay. You're talking about projections from the Treasurer's office, not money in the bank today. And so I respect the absolute importance of roads and bridges, but it doesn't matter who walks into this office and says, before you even run the numbers and see how much money you have, I need $10 million now. The answer is hell no.
So on the issue of bonding, that is a physical 100% impossibility because our engineer's office does not have the capacity to pay for the bond. Engineer Gills, am I misstating your financial position?
That is correct. In order to bond $1 million for a 20-year period at 3%, your payback is somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000 a year. You could bond $10 million. You've just committed yourself for $800,000 a year for the next 20 years. Now you got a problem because you got $200,000 left to fix your roads and bridges for the next 20 years, unless the state legislature decides they're going to up our income, which probably will have to be done sooner or later, but it's not going to be sooner. It'll probably be later. And the other side of it is that, you know, that's really unacceptable. If we can't fix the roads and bridges, the economy and the quality of life in Lake County dies.
And just following through on that, I have a long history of working with an engineer's office. Your predecessor, Tom Gillis, and I kind of made a little history in Lake County together. You have held the line your entire time in office. Unlike the overwhelming majority of counties in the state of Ohio, the engineer's office does not make demands against the general fund. It is, and the term crisis, although the county's never been in a stronger financial position, this is the definition of the perfect storm. We are being hit with serious demands that need to be addressed. Am I misstating anything, sir?
No, you're not.
Gentlemen, we're going to obviously have to have a longer talk on this. I would concede that this does need to be talked through, but we do have a past practice of economic development dollars going to infrastructure projects. It wasn't so many years ago. We allocated $1.5 million out to local municipalities for infrastructure projects. It was well received and the monies were well spent. Right now we have parts of our county that are isolated from the very safety forces that we claim to be supportive of. I just want to get that into the discussion. Engineer Gills, anything you want to answer?
Well, yeah, I would add that if you can't drive into or out of the county, you can forget about the economics. You won't need much of anything else. Thank you.
Gentlemen, anything further regarding engineer?
Mr. Matus, is there anything in the budget that reflects any of this ask?
No.
I think with our commitment to law enforcement, we have to, I mean, this is way above what the prosecutor and the sheriff's department's asking, so I think we need to get through this budget process and prioritize what we can in the engineer's request here after we see where the dust settles.
Thank you. All right. We could just circle back to the soil and waters. Anybody be able to contact? Okay, Dan Donaldson is what I was looking for.
Jason, can you speak to the AmeriCorps? What they, is that an outside person that comes in to help?
From my understanding, yeah, they're the participating funder in the agency.
So as this letter stands, I guess I don't have, it looks like his budget's been the same, lower and slightly higher since 2018 or beyond.
And I will add, though, when we did the reduction of 5%, which actually netted out to a 10% reduction in budgets because of the COVID and the budgetary concerns, he did comply with that, but then they also paid the penalty of the reduction in matching dollars because of that. So there was a ripple effect associated with his being a team player and working with us. So, Commissioner Pletchik, have you had a chance to give an eye to that?
Mr. Matus, you set the budget at this level for what reason? I really want your input on giving another $33,000 some dollars here when they've been able to successfully run their office on the previous budget. I want a sense of, is this nice or is this necessary? You know, is it nice to have an AmeriCorps volunteer who helps out around the office, or is this some kind of mission critical service here? Because given the incredible needs we have in other departments, nice is not something we can afford to fund. Necessary, it's not an enormous dollar amount. So I really want to get a sense of your professional opinion. Is this a nice expense or a necessary expense? Will Soil and Water continue to function without it, or does it absolutely need it?
There's silence just because I'm thinking about this. I'm not an expert in soil and water department. I trust the experts, such as the sheriff and the chief on the sheriff's office. In regards to soil and water, I am not an expert at all. I don't know if this is needed or if this is extra position that's a feel good. So I'm not trying to avoid your question. I'm not an expert in soil and water, and I don't want to say one way or the other because I'm not as familiar with soil and water with that. So I think that's a Dan Donaldson question. Not that I'm not trying to not answer your question. I just, in regards to the budget, we have a finite amount of resources. You guys allocate how they go to the different departments. My opinion, I'm a recommender. I'm never a decision maker. For example, some departments I would not have given anything extra to. However, you guys are the thing. So again, to circle back, not trying to not answer your question, I would defer to the expert being Mr. Donaldson. So.
Well, I think we're going to have a longer conversation about this then.
That's fair. But I will add to the discussion, though, soil and water and economic development is a key discussion this board also entertains routinely. You cannot have construction without soil and water's participation. I'm sort of looking over towards our engineers, so it's unfair to be looking at you, but I also know you also have a tremendous expertise in these areas. So without our soil and water's participation, and again, the ask for Dan Donaldson to be here was completely ad hoc. His absence should not be reflective of a lack of enthusiasm or interest. I did ask him to provide us some documentation for his ask. I regret that it's not up to the standards or the inquiry level that's before us at this time. Mike, how bad would it be if we kept this one open till Thursday?
It's not going to be, I need a decision on budget today because I have to prepare it. If not, the auditor's office, I have to provide a document and I have to key all the resolutions in with that. So that would have to be an additional ask after Thursday. I can't leave that open with that because...
Is your microphone on, sir?
No, sorry.
Can you start over, please? I
Yep.
apologize.
I would ask that be kicked if you guys decide to table that or look at it at a later time. That will not be, I can't have that an open item for Thursday because I have to present you guys a budget and I have to do a lot of work on behalf of the auditor's office that with the temporary versus a permanent and amount to be keyed. They want it in a certain format now. For revenues as well as expenditures. We've always provided expenditures. So this would be an item, if you guys do delay it, that would have to be addressed after Thursday's meeting. I don't want to leave it open until, I'd like to have all of the budgets, like I said, the sheriff, the prosecutor, the auditor's office, etc., all finalized so I can finalize the resolution for you guys so you guys can take the action that you have to take on Thursday.
And Mr. Mays, just for anyone watching, it's correct to say that we can always amend the budget.
You can always
So we
amend.
have to pass the budget this Thursday. It's the
Correct.
latest time that we can pass a comprehensive budget, but we can amend the budget in any respect the very next week.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thoughts?
Again, I'm just gonna go by my previous statement. It looks like his budget's been pretty tight for the last several years. It is true that at any development that they are involved, need to be involved, probably legally have to be there. And so I see that he hasn't asked for a new vehicle, so I don't have an issue with the 33,000.
And at the risk of sounding like I'm trying to split the baby and being respectful of Commissioner Plechnik, Mike, if you baked this into the numbers and we had Director Donaldson come to the next meeting and we find that his explanation is not satisfactory, how difficult would it be to say we're going to approve it with this reducted or redacted?
What I can do is the 33,000 could go into the appropriations. It would not be, there's a 2-action process with this. It's you have to have appropriations before the expense is made. So we could appropriate the 33,000, but we could not do the cash transfer until you guys are content. If you guys so choose to do that, we could do that.
Would that be acceptable?
So be it. I just want to make sure that we're not committing to this expenditure unless or until we have sufficient proof that it is absolutely necessary, because we have heard about a great deal of necessities today. And I don't want to be spending money on something that is nice or that would be helpful versus something that is absolutely necessary, given the other needs that we have before us.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Egbert, you okay with that? It
Yes.
seems like we kind of just split the baby on that one. Well, I think we've gone over.
I just want to summarize so I have my direction.
Yes.
So for soil and water, we'll appropriate the 33,000. For the auditor's office, it would be their life
Wait,
insurance.
slow down, Mike. You're actually going too fast for me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I misplaced this other page. Sorry.
The auditor's office, it equates to about 43,000. I have requested those documents that he said he would provide at the last meeting. However, I have not received those. I'm just going off copies that I have. I did publicly request that, just so you guys are copied on that. That's about 43,000. The prosecutor, we did 200,000 from the general fund and 100 from DTAC. So if you subtract the 300,000, that would be about 403,000 added to the general fund as well. So in essence, that would be 603,000 in total in aggregate for the general fund.
And that's the key. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. I'm looking over at the prosecutor. You're agreeing with this math that we've already made some adjustments from the original ask to where we are.
I'm not sure I fully understand. And Mike, if you could help me with this, because I'm a little confused.
Yep, if we were originally budgeting, hold on, let me go back up just so everyone can see it. We originally gave 2.7 million. Then I added 100,000 that we talked about with Commissioner Tyler and so forth with that. Mr. Colson paid the raises out of DTAC last year that equated to equivalent of $200,000 if you aggregate over a course of a year. The original budget was 2.7 million. I added 100,000 because that's what we talked about before. That took it to 2.8. We then raised it another 100,000 to 2.9 million. So that's $200,000 from the general fund. And Mr. Colson last year agreed that he would be paying $100,000 from DTAC. So 200 plus 100 is 300,000, and the ask is for 703. So the difference would be the 403,000, and an all-in cost would approximately be $465,000 in addition to what we've already added to that. So it would be 603,000 from the general fund and $100,000 from DTAC.
Thank you.
Do you concur?
And again, this is why the budgeting process is not linear. We're working on several different documents, which is why it's so important that we start with a fixed point in time and space, which is why we focused on the 703,000 plus benefits. You just heard the process of accounting for all of that.
Mr. President,
Sir?
let me just repeat, while we absolutely do not vote at work sessions, I believe that what our budget director and prosecutor just described is reasonable and something that we can afford.
Thank you, sir.
One thing in regards to that, I'm hearing a lot of people are watching what the commissioners are doing. This is going to have a ripple effect on the entire county as a whole. The judges are watching, other departments are watching, and I think it's fair. I think it's only fair for the commissioners to address. We provided a 2.5% raise to people. Some people in the prosecutors will be getting significant raises. He's going to have to worry about that with his union negotiations going forward. And also, we are going to have to look hard, if these are all granted, about your other staff. I understand public and safety are very important, and that makes up approximately 70% of our budget. However, building regulations is very important. Building and grounds is very important as well. So I hope the commissioners take that in consideration moving forward, because I understand the need for public safety, but also there's a need for IT people. Because if not, they're not going to be able to have a functioning IT department, a functioning treasurer's office to collect that, a functioning recorder's office, etc. The coroner, we're facing a lot of needs with the coroner's office moving forward that we talked about last time with the morgue and so forth. Hopefully bringing on Dr. Keep to do the autopsies will help control some of our autopsy costs that we're going to Cuyahoga County. But there's a lot of different things. I just talked to Bridget Cronick and Judge Condon's office the other day that they have another interpreter fee on a case, that it's going to be another $10,000 that they just asked for. There's a lot of unprecedented needs for that, and I hope the commissioners take in consideration not only just the public safety staff, but also this has a ripple effect on every position. Utilities have, with their wastewater treatment plant operators, there's a special certifications with that we have to pay a fair and reasonable rate. So while we only are addressing the prosecutors, sheriff, and the auditor's office right now, I think that we're going to have a big ask moving forward with a lot of other various departments that are under the general fund. So I just wanted to make that, the commissioners aware of that.
And to be completely clear, I'll add to that, our prosecutor's office, there's also the public defender's office.
Correct.
By statute parity, but that is not to say that although we're looking at, again, I'm going to stick with the 703,000, that does not mean that the public defenders is getting 703,000, because they're very different departments. It's parity based on like.
Well, they don't have the number of people.
Yes, they don't have the number of people.
Theirs is usually whatever the prosecutors has in past practice. It usually equates to approximately half of that. The prosecutors and the public defender go hand in hand. They have to have parity. So if Mr. Colson is paying an attorney $110,000, the public defender is going to request that. And I know it's been some. The judges have made me aware of the magistrates and their staff attorneys, like I brought up last time. So that will be something that we're facing in the future, on top of a lot of capital projects that we have. Like I said, the jail is the biggest undertaking that I have ever taken, and I think Lake County itself will ever be taking, and that number goes up every single day. Like I said, we try to provide the best services in the finite amount of resources that there are. As Commissioner Pleshnik said, it's fine if some people swing and miss. If I swing and miss, I know what happens to myself. I have to be conservative with this. If not, I'm not going to be here. Jason won't be here either. Like I said, but we do have to be conscious. Like I said, we're only talking about public safety right now, but people are watching what is going on with that. I mean, it's everyone has different degrees, but everyone. I don't like when people discredit the B&G workers, because guess what? Prosecutors wouldn't be coming to work if B&G wasn't doing their job and cleaning pathways and so forth. Insignificant. They don't have the same degree as that. I understand that, but we'll have union negotiations with them coming up as well. Planning department, as well. We got to pay them a fair amount. Like I said, it's a different job market now, and I hope the commissioners take that in consideration for the future.
Mr. President,
Sir.
I just want to emphasize the most important person who's watching, and that's the taxpayer. That's the taxpayer. And if you tell the taxpayer the county government is operating on a budget that reflects last year plus 2.5% to increase everyone's pay, I think that the average taxpayer would say, well, as a senior with all the expenses on me, with almost no adjustments on my fixed income, that sounds pretty good. I wish that I was getting the 2.5%. So I just want to be clear to everyone that ultimately each and every one of us, whether we're elected, appointed, or hired, we work for the taxpayer. That's the only reason any of us or any of these positions exist. We're not talking about cutting any department's budget. I think that's a wonderful place for us to be. But I think about that senior on a fixed income. I think about that family that's struggling. We need to remember that ultimately the most important person who is not in the room is the taxpayer. That's what every department serves and services. And if we make life unaffordable for them, all of us are irrelevant. None of these roles matter if we're not putting the taxpayer first. And I believe that we are. I believe that collectively we're coming together to do that. But as we talk about this and this and this and this and this and this and this need, remember, we only have purpose in serving the taxpayer. And some taxpayers would say, hey, if you have to cut the budget 5 or 10%, so be it. Not a problem for me. We're not talking about cutting the budget. There is no gloom and doom here in this building. We're talking about the worst case scenario, your department gets a 2.5% increase, and we're looking at strategic investments in other departments. So I just want to be clear, we're not oppressing or cutting the budget of any department here. We're talking about what increases we're going to give them. And I have to say, I think that taxpayers so often feel like they're being ignored in this process because they don't get those increases. They just have to make do. And given that we are their servants, not the other way around, I just feel like it has to be stated. You're right. We have to state the value of buildings and grounds, the value of the Planning Commission. I just want to make sure in that discussion we're not losing sight of our residents and taxpayers who are not getting any of this additional support. They're not going to get an automatic 2.5%. Many folks have lost their jobs. Layoffs are beginning. It's tough out there. The job market has been strong for a long time, but look at the frontline indicators. Some economists say we're already in a recession. Most say we're headed there. We got to remember the taxpayer, and we have to make sure that one way or the other we keep things affordable for them. And when we just look at it from the perspective of, well, so-and-so got this much, I want that much, remember the senior on a fixed income who can't even afford to buy dog food.
Last time I checked, I'm on a fixed income as well. With that being said, like I said, I want to provide the best budget that you guys direct me to with the finite amount of resources that it is. Permanent improvement does not get replenished just because we want it to be. We made a strategic plan back in 2012 with the reduction of the inside millage and the increase of sales tax that Sheriff Dunlap and Mr. Zapanzik were the two elected officials in the front row that needed that. We also are losing various other people throughout the county. Like I said, I understand, but when people say about seniors on fixed income, I think almost everyone's on fixed income. Like I said, so inflation is affecting other, I'm not speaking on behalf of all the county employees that are not public safety. I'm just saying there comes a time when we had, well before you guys were here, when the sheriff deputies did get raises. They did take furloughs, but the county employees did go 4 years without a raise. So when I hear people about fixed incomes and so forth, I think we're on fixed incomes as well. We get paid bi-weekly, the same amount. Like I said, I want to try to provide, like I said, the best budget that you guys want at your direction, but I just wanted to emphasize that that's going to come up, and that's going to be a decision that the board's going to have to make in the future. So I understand your guys' direction with the public safety. I get completely. I've worked with Chief Izzo probably the most out of any chief deputy since Sheriff Leon Bruno was the chief as well. And I've probably had more discussions with Mr. Colson over the last month and a half than I've ever had in my 17 years here. It is, we have to be conscious, like you said, of the taxpayer, of some unfunded or unnecessary general fund expenditures that may be able to be cut. You guys are the decision makers. Like I said, I'm only a recommender, so I will carry out the path that you guys lay down for me. But there is something that Joel's facing. I think Joel's not here, but just, the retainage of our quality staff. In Lake County, I think we have a great staff. Like I said, not saying prosecutor is very important, so is the deputy, but like I said, so is IT. So's the commissioner's office, to make sure we enter in all the agreements. There's been a lot of stuff that is now based on the individual departments taking on more responsibility, doing their own expensing and so forth with that. You've heard a lot of people, a lot of departments saying, I think there'll be a request for increased staffing in the future. So just to let the commissioners know, I think that's coming. That's a hard decision for you guys because people see what other people get. This is the real world. I mean, people see that. It's a problem that we're all facing, not just public safety. Like I said, right now I've told Chief Izzo and Sheriff Leon Bruno about 10 times. I personally don't know why anyone would want to go into law enforcement right now, seeing everything. They've heard me say that about 10 times, just with the reflection. When I was a kid, you see a cop, it's a good thing. Now it seems like it's a bad thing when you see a deputy coming or a patrolman or a local police officer. I know Mr. Gills, I worked with him with the road project over the last 5 years with that. I understand a need for public infrastructure. I know he has his own funding with that, but I have also heard the commissioners also say about economic development. So I think we got, I'll put before you the budget that I have been directed to, but there's going to be a lot of ask in the future that the commissioners are going to have to look at hard and long and make a decision based on that, just so.
And Mike, I just want to be real clear, you're going to bake in to the public defender the 50%. We've already heard it loud and clear, that's an appropriation, that's not a transfer of monies. That keeps us compliant with statute and parity. It's past practice that that's the ratio, just so we, as we're going forward, we know what our placeholders are.
If I could make just a...
Sir, and are you off mic, by the way? I'm sorry. You can
Oh,
swing the mic over.
I'm sorry. I think the last time I looked, and I'm going on memory, but I looked a month or so ago because I was trying to hire a public defender, and they were paid so much money I couldn't hire them. If you look at the salaries, I don't think that the public defenders right now are pretty comparable or better than the prosecutor's office. But I know if we get more, you have to get, you need the parity. I know the administrative code and what it says about that. But I just wanted to say it's not, I don't think it's, if you look at the amounts that are there, that it isn't going to be, they're not under us. If anything, they're over us at the moment.
But just to be clear, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I will disagree with our prosecutor on occasion, and this is about to be one. Where you start, where they start is different. Where you camp out and where they camp out is different.
Oh, yes, correct.
So just to
correct.
put it into context,
No.
that one was for you, Vanessa.
Mr. President, I do want to ask our prosecutor, though, because he's also our counsel, and so I apologize for forcing you to put on that hat.
Oh, no problem.
In terms of looking at the parity statute, my understanding is that the wording is rather loose.
It is.
And so I'm not sure that it would be fair to interpret that statute as saying we must give 50% more. I think that it would be more responsible, provided that the law allowed it, for us to actually look at the public defender's budget and see whether or not an increase and what size increase is required for parity under that statute. And just pragmatically, I mean, I just want to make sure that I'm not misinterpreting.
You're not. You're absolutely correct.
So I wouldn't just bake in an increase. I think that's something we should look at once again after the fact. I mean, we can bake in increases all over the place and then we're broke. And while I know that one is not going to break the bank, once again, the person, and I want to echo our budget director, Mike Matus, people will be watching and making requests. I think the people who are watching the most right now are taxpayers. And they're going to be making the request of, where are you going to cut the budget? Where are you going to save money? Where are you going to cut my taxes? I think you're actually going to hear more of that than anything else. And so as commissioners, it's also our job to hear that request and balance that. So I think that we have been very aggressive in supporting our staff and recognizing this unique situation in the labor market by saying, we're not cutting any budgets. In fact, we're going to do, worst case scenario, a 2.5% increase to everyone's budget. And then we're going to look at what's available and see where we can make strategic investments. And we've all agreed at countless public meetings that those investments principally need to be in law enforcement. So I think that we're being incredibly aggressive, and rightly so, in supporting our staff in this labor market. But to suggest that the grave concern is, are we paying enough, when we're actually increasing everyone, I think that you're going to hear from taxpayers, do we need to start rebalancing here? What are we going to give back to them? Because they are not going to simply accept that everything is mission critical and we need more and more and more and more and more and more money. That is not going to fly.
But I don't want to be misinterpreted as saying that I don't think you're going to need to give additional money to the public defenders to keep parity. I do think you're going to have to. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
And I'm going to give you the lifeline, and I'm asking you to please listen carefully, because if I misstate something, please give me a chance to correct it. But in my time as a commissioner, working with you closely, you know that I've also worked closely with our public defenders.
Yes.
You have worked with myself, Commissioner Troy, Commissioner Serino, and by the way, this is by benefit of history. I'm big on history. How did we get to where we are? You have worked with Commissioner Young, Commissioner Tyler, now Commissioner Pledger-Gregovich.
And a lot more commissioners before
if I
that.
miss somebody in that mix. The number 50%
Has been the typical.
This is not something that's pulled out of the air. This is something, and you just said it, typical. And when you are budgeting, you have to budget realistically. If we're going to know what we're going to cut, we need to know what we're going to be obligated to. And if 50% gives us a working number, that also would be scalable, just like our prosecutors. That 50% is not going to be 50% this year, but we have to have a working number so we know what we're talking about.
I would agree with that.
With that, thank you, sir. So, Mike, please bake in the 50%. I think you've heard us loud and clear, and if it becomes too much, then we'll just deal with it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support.
No, thank you.
One thing that I want to put on record, no department in my time here has been cut more than B&G.
Oh, I understand.
No one.
I remember back in the day.
Like I said, I understand the public law enforcement, but like I said, these are significant dollar amounts that we're putting in the prosecutors and sheriff. They're needed. However, we also have to take in consideration B&G, planning, and so forth. I understand what you're saying about the 2.5%. I don't think that's going to cut it in the future based on the job market that we have. We can disagree on that all. I'm just being realistic with that. 17 years, I've learned a lot about the needs for the various different departments and so forth. What we ask departments to do with outside funding and so forth. So we definitely have seen a change with that over the last year. So like I said, I just wanted to be the commissioners to be aware that I foresee a lot more requests coming their way for general fund expenditures. In addition to the jail, in addition to the EOC, like I said, I'm looking at this long-term plans, debt service payment on the jail, EOC replacement, tuck pointing on buildings. We have $0 right now in there for sheriff vehicles. $0 right now for this year. We always work hand in hand with the sheriff and Chief Izzo throughout the year. We also have to worry about central dispatch. I've heard you guys loud and clear about central dispatch and hopefully that expanding in the future and so forth. their union negotiations are going on right now. So, like I said, I just don't want to forget B&G telecom gentlemen, because without telecom, they run dispatch. They run all the computers at dispatch. They run all the radios with that, and it's becoming more an IT department than just running wire like it is. So we see a lot of needs, and like I said, I just want to remember the common folk here at the county as well, because like you said, the taxpayer, most taxpayers are common folk. No one wants to pay more taxes. I mean, that's why we did the inside millage reduction when we did the sales tax. That's why when we were talking about a sales tax for the jail, that was what I felt was the fairest. That jail and the project and requests from various departments, we probably could have done it within the inside mill limitation. It blew up based on public defender, prosecutor, sheriff needs. If you have more people, you're going to need more adult probation officers, food costs, and so forth. We can't control food costs. We can't control if someone gets sick in the jail. So there's other unfunded stuff. The veteran services, like we discussed last time, they're entitled to a $500,000. The crippled children account, yes, and that's what it's called. I'm not trying to be, we are responsible up to 1/10. So I'm trying to control all departments, such as the auditors did a request you guys thought was reasonable. I think there'll be a lot more reasonable requests from other departments, the recorder, the clerk of courts, like I said. So just want to make the commissioners aware of that. Like I said, every budget that I've done, we take in consideration what the taxpayer is. I think Mr. Colson has heard me and my stance on real estate taxes probably over the last 17 years, more than ever in the last 2 months. But like I said, I'm not a person for real estate taxes. I'll come out and say that. However, that's how stuff is funded right now in the state of Ohio. That's how schools are and so forth with that. So I understand keeping control costs, but you have to pay for it. You can only kick the can down the road so many years, and then you have to pay the piper at times. So that's, like I said, I've heard you guys, the prosecutors, and that equivalent to that, it's going to be based on the prosecutors, the auditors, soil and water, the sheriff, and the public defender. That's about $760,000. So we will have to go. Hopefully not. I know Commissioner Pleshnik and I talked personally one-on-one about the budget stabilization. Hopefully we won't have to go into the payroll liability or the budget stabilization. But to make this balance work, I already went into it about 1.2 to make it work. Hopefully, sales tax will cover that. Hopefully, like you said, but that changes every day. And that's a 3-month lag behind. So hopefully we won't have to, but I'll probably have to go into that a little bit more. So I'll have to change the revenue estimate based on that. So I'll be getting to work on this afternoon. Like I said, there's a lot of work that I have to do in prep for the auditor's office with that. So I hear you guys loud and clear with that. So.
And Mike, just Dan Donaldson is joining us. Dan, I apologize for just totally unannounced, but your ask of the additional $33,000, we've kind of come to an understanding that there's going to be an appropriation, and that what is debatable right now is the actual genuine need. Could you come to the
Sure.
and present? Because I think that if we could just check this off, that way we don't have to do it on Thursday. And again, I apologize for the terrible disadvantage we're putting you at.
No worries.
Thank
Mr.
you.
President?
Sir.
Before we hear from Mr. Donaldson, there is one thing I want to react to that Mr. Matus just shared that I think is very important in finalizing the budget. I think it's important that we are realistic. I agree with being conservative. It's one of my favorite words. But I also think it's important that we are realistic. We've said that as well. And I think it's very important that we demonstrate that we are not projecting a deficit budget, because in reality we are not. We talked about going into the budget stabilization fund unless if the revenues were dramatically less than last year, we would not dip into budget stabilization for this budget. And I want to ask Mr. Matus, what was our revenue last year versus what is our projected revenue in this budget?
79 million, and that would include some one-term cost. And let me say one thing that...
And what is the projected revenue in this budget?
It's going to be approximately 71 million. In regards to that, legally, we're not allowed to pass a deficit budget. You can eat at your carryover, and I know some have recommended that from other elected officials. However, legally, you are not allowed to have a deficit budget per the revised code. I can't project to you, I cannot legally provide you a budget that is not balanced. Yes, it might take some of the carryover balance away. However, when people say about a negative fund, you cannot, I legally cannot provide that to you. Any department can't provide that to you. So I just want to clarify that. I would never provide you a document that would have a negative fund balance.
And I appreciate that, but I wouldn't even want to make the public statement that we are projecting to spend more than our current revenues for the year, particularly given that last year's revenues were 79 million. I think that it would be conservative to say that the revenues are in the ballpark for this year of 75 million. I frankly project that we will exceed that, and when we do, I'm going to remind everyone that my projection was correct. But given that we're not a year from now, I think we need to have closer to a $75 million projection to be realistic.
And I realistically do that. I respect that. However, if I swing and miss, that's bad. Real bad. Real bad. Layoffs have occurred. I've been through the recession. I was here for that. And at the end of the year, let's face it, you guys want... If we have $5 million extra and it comes in at that, guess what? Last year you guys told me put it in a public safety fund. I think that's what you guys would probably tell me to do this year as well. But like I said, you guys speak informal stuff. I'm worried about the next few years. I don't believe in short-term planning. I believe in long-term stability with that. Like I said, if I swing and miss, that's great. If you swing and miss, I'm the blame. So I am very conservative, like I said. I understand other departments want to be very aggressive, all this stuff, all that jazz. I've been there, done that. 17 years, like I said. I feel, like I said, being conservative is a lot better than being aggressive and missing. That's just my opinion. But like I said, I work for you guys. You guys tell me what the budget is. I will prepare it, like I said, in accordance with what you guys told me today. And like I said, hopefully we'll never go in budget stabilization, but there's going to be a time where that's needed. Like I said, I understand everyone with their little house of cards comments, all that jazz. I get it. No one wants the taxpayers to pay more money. No one does. But a jail is going to be a big, big, big undertaking. And that's just one capital project. Like I said, the sheriff range, that was never discussed 2 years ago. That was a $250,000 project originally started off, and now it's well over $1 million. Without good planning, like I said with that, and like I said, I hope sales tax comes in great, but you just said before, we might be going into a recession. We have to look at sales tax every single day. I look at expenditures every single day. I look at revenues every single day, like I said, and yes, I am conservative. And I hope that you guys like that about me. If I'm over aggressive in that, I'm not doing the damn people of Lake County a good job, to be honest with you. Like I said, I want a sustainable, good budget based on your direction. I understand 75. What happens if it does come in at 65? Then what are we going to do? It's great to talk this game about, the revenues going up. Inflation is. Food, like I said, within the jail. Medical claims. We can't control any of that. Ian over there does a great job paying the bills in a timely manner and keeping me informed. The judges, like I said, they're definitely watching this. As we know, we had a request from one of the judges for a garage. I'm sure that will come back up. We did pay also for a secure facility for some other judges as well. We've already done that. Everyone watches. There is no secret at this county. I know some people in some departments, every time a raise is done for people, they're looking at it. Every single raise. I wish they had time to do their own job, but that is just a dose of reality. Like I said, it is hard. Mr. Colson, I understand the need for his, and he stated his case about that. Utility operators are necessary for the safety of our facility, for water treatment and so forth. With that, sometimes there have to be raises in water and sewer fees. Sometimes there is. Like I said, hopefully we'll never have a tax increase. Sometimes they're necessary based on their request. If you look at the prosecutor's budget, it's going to be over 1.1 million just in salary line item compared to what it was in last year. Then the sheriff's. So that $2 million, say it was $70 million last year, it's going to be at least $72 million plus all the benefits. We already know the judges asked for their IT staff to be paid from general fund as well as their magistrates. That was $500,000. With payroll associated cost, that cost, it's easy to project out for permanent improvement costs. Mr. Gills can project out that. It's the whole thing with employee costs. That's why if you look at our budget, not only is 70%, between 66 and 70% public safety, it's also the employee costs. So when you're adding more cost with that, that never stops. It only compounds upon itself. And like I said, I believe in fairness and a great budget. Like I said, hopefully, Commissioner Pleshnik in the past and Commissioner Hamercheck, Commissioner Regovich hasn't worked with me on a budget, but hopefully I carry out your tasks that you guys request. Like I said, when we did the road improvement notes, I worked with Mr. Gills. I was told me and Mr. Gills were given the task to monetize it and do as many roads as possible in a short amount of time. We accomplished that. We were given a thing with the road improvement. I know you said that was very successful. I would love to have that $1.5 million back for the jail. I would love to use all the ARPA funds for the jail. I would love to use the opiate monies with that. I'm probably going to be dead or retired and likely dead before we can use the opiate money regards to that. Like I said, I'm looking big picture, long term. We got a person, like I said, and pay a significant payout in tax map. Gentleman's been here over 30 years. He's entitled to his vacation and sick leave. That's probably going to be about $40,000, $50,000 when it's all said and done. That's why we have the payroll liability. That's the whole intent with that. So I get that. I just worry about, like I said, we always talk about fairness and so forth, and like I said, I just don't want some of the B&G staff that work damn hard, the commissioner staff, being Clerk Bell, that works very hard. I even have to say Mr. Boyd as well, that
Sometimes.
puts in a lot of extra hours. Me and Jason probably talk 3 times every single day, just about different things. We just got a request from Paul Stefanko on a $44,000 recording equipment from Central Dispatch that's not going to be baked in this budget. We also got another request for generation the fire station alerting that Paul's coming up with. I'm going to be asking Jason to try to pay for ARPA from, but we'll have that discussion at a later time. So I just don't want to lose the fact that all of these they're significant asks for the general fund. And like I said, I want to be conservative. If I'm not conservative and I miss, I know what happens to myself. So I appreciate that. I hope it comes in. I hope we get $100 million this year in revenue. I really do. Then
So do I.
So
Yeah.
and then guess what? We can pay for roads. We can pay for all the arches you guys want. We can pay for I'll even take a picture by the arch under this. But like I said, I know your guys' number one priority after this budget is to get going on the jail and what the next steps are with that. I've been working on that since 2012. Like I said with that. You guys asked, the prior board asked about this building. We try to address that as much as we can, and Commissioner Troy was the one. I do not want any long-term debt on this building. Guess what? We don't. Utilities has a little bit portion. Mr. Gills has agreed that, except maybe this year, the $1 million payment down for that. He still owes over $9 million on those notes. And with interest rates fluctuating a little bit higher than what they have been in the past, it came in at 4%, by the way. So a little better than what we estimated, but it's still significantly, when it was 1% and the yield was 0.2. Yeah, it's and just the cost of doing business for everything. Chemicals that B&G is buying. We have no control over that. Toilet paper. We all remember Toilet Gate of 2012. Or the desk gate of 2000, or the desk gate of 2023 as well.
Mr. President, while we're talking about toilet paper,
some people don't think it's right to buy it. I mean, that's just. I think Mr. Colson does not want to talk about that, but I did see him shaking his head. Just so he's aware.
that to the side, as appropriately it should be. I want to reiterate that unless both my colleagues disagree with me, I think that we need to have a different revenue projection here. I think a midpoint between last year's considerably higher number and the current draft in the budget is responsible. That's not to suggest that we should spend that money hoping it comes in. I'm not suggesting additional alterations to the budget. I just think that telling taxpayers that last year's number of 79 million, we're projecting nearly 8-9 million less, I don't think that that makes sense. So my direction to you is to go up to a middle ground there. I think 75 million makes more sense in terms of a realistic projection, and hopefully it's higher than that. I frankly believe that it will be, but nonetheless, I think we should be more realistic with that projection.
Those projections came from the individual department that provides those. The one that was down a little bit was investment earnings, and I have adjusted that to 8 million. If we do use our fund balances, that will be less money that we have investment. Sales tax, like I said, I will do whatever you guys want for the estimated revenues, but I do look at that on a monthly, like I said, almost daily basis, and runs. I know Mr. Boyd gets conveyance fees. I send him that on a monthly basis. I send him also the building department on that. So whatever you guys want to do, I will take that out and estimate that. So I need two of you guys to tell me what to do with that.
If I may, though, and Commissioner Plechik makes an excellent point about we need to be realistic. Mm-hmm. I too have reached out to our wine industry, and Tony DeBevic's okay with my using his name. I'm going to use him as an example. One of his concerns that he has presented is there is a storm coming. As a pilot, he appreciates the dangers of trying to travel through a storm. One of the things he pointed out was, as vibrant as the wine industry has been in the last several years, he's noticing the change. People are now not being as indulgent as they have been the last couple of years, which has resulted in sales tax revenues being up. He's noticing a change, and I think this is something that we really need to point to. People are starting to use cash, what they have in their pockets, and that's a way of self-budgeting. If you go out and you know you've got a pocket full of 20s, when those are gone, you're done spending for the night. People previously were using their credit cards and they were enjoying themselves. He's starting to see the old school way of doing things. You know, we used to call it the envelope system, where you set this dollars aside for this and you set those dollars aside for that. But he's seen this before, and these are leading indicators of downturns in the economy. I'm pretty confident to say this economy is definitely not in a booming situation, unless it's booming like a balloon with a pin sticking in the side of it. we really need to be conservative. We need to be consistent in our planning process. If we swing and miss because we're swinging for the fences, let's just get on base. The people in Lake County have expectations of standards of service. Let's meet those standards. Let's not worry about going for the home run. Home runs are great when they happen. They're exciting, they're wonderful. But if we don't play just the fundamentals, meet the basic requirements, our prosecutor has made it abundantly clear there are basic things that are in danger of not being met. Budgeting strategy is one of them. And when one of our leading business people says there's a storm coming, I listen. So with that, Dan Donaldson has joined us today. So here's your chance to make your pitch.
Thanks. Dan Donaldson, Lake Solon Water District. I'm the district administrator. That's the same as the director. I just want to say a few words about the district, and then I'll answer some questions. I just want to impress upon the commissioners, and thank you, Mike. Mike and I work together a lot, especially at the end of the year, and I like to think we run a pretty tight ship at the district. The Solon Water District is a special district in the state of Ohio. It operates under the Ohio Revised Code, so we've got Lake County in our name, and our operating area is the political boundaries of Lake County, but we're actually kind of a special district of the state, much like a fire district, park district, garbage district, whatever you want to call it. So, and with that, we have a very unique form of funding these districts to work on conservation projects in our district area, and that is at the beginning of the year, I request appropriations from commissioners and communities that we do work in. And then in preparation for the state budget, which starts July 1, the legislature provides matching dollars on what we generate locally. It's not 100% matching dollars, and that varies too. In the past, it's gone as low as 80%. Typically, it's right around 89. It's starting to sound like it might be a little bit better this year. Soil and water districts across the state are working on some very large conservation issues, and some funding's coming in through H2O Ohio and things like that. So I just wanted to let you know that the dollars we request do get matched. We run approximately a $500,000 district. It fluctuates between $450 and $500 over the years. I have gone from a full-time staff of 6 to a full-time staff of 4 with 2 part-timers. So we try to be very efficient. We go out, so with the commissioner funding, which has been $210,000 the last couple years, that's been a bit of a reduction, but that reduction goes beyond the reduction that we receive from the commissioners. So what happens is we get that state match that starts with the state fiscal year in June, and so we have this match shadow that has been following us the last couple years based on this reduction. So, you know, I was, like every other department, I'm looking for sustainability. I do want to let you know that, you know, we request $210,000. Of that, we turn around and write a check, not right away, but that year. We do pay rent here. We pay $25,000 in rent to the county, have for years. We also have our indirect cost of $16,000. So, you know, we're getting 210, but we're paying back 41 to the county right away. But we do get matched on that. So long story short, you know, we run a pretty efficient district. $500,000 district that's run on 210, hopefully $233,000, $243,000 from the commissioners. We're running a $500,000 district. And we are doing work, the way the workload is generated is we have a publicly elected board of 5 members. They decide what the conservation priority, with the help of the staff, of course, decide what the conservation priorities are, and the state of Ohio says, okay, you've got a publicly elected board, here's your state match dollars to work on your own local conservation priorities. They do not tell us with the exception of agricultural pollution abatement, which is written right in the Ohio Revised Code, our conservation programs are local and not state directed. So it's kind of a really interesting, kind of a true, local prioritized government funding system to let us work on local conservation issues. And the commissioners have been very supportive of all of our programs, farmland preservation and others. We have a conservation easement program. And one of the things I've been working on over the years is to try to try to truth our budget with Mike on what is our special, we have a special fund and we have a district fund. So we have a county fund that we run through the county auditor, our special fund, which is where your dollars are going to go. And then we have a district fund, which is, best way to think of it is a checkbook. We do not participate in the, what do you call that fund, personnel liability? We do not participate in that. We have to have funding to cover unemployment for all of our employees. We have to have funding for all the leave payouts and things like that. So we do have a reserve fund for that we keep on the books, and that is noted every month in our board minutes. We've got a couple different ways to calculate that. And then we have all of these programs that we don't bother the commissioners with. So when we work with schools and we work with grants and we have tree sales and are selling rain barrels, that is not run through the county auditor's office. That's run through our other district account. So, and what I've been working on as much as possible is to try and take that work that is not mandated by the Ohio Revised Code, or that work that is not mandated by our administering the county's regulations on erosion and sediment control. We are kind of the environmental check for all new construction in the county for the most part. Almost every community works with us directly. So we participate in the building and construction process. We currently have about 400 permits open. A lot of that's carryover from last year. As far as workload at the Soil and Water District, we have not seen any slowdown since 2019 in the number of permits that we've got operating in the system. And most of our permits require a 2-week inspection sequence. So, we're out there, and I only have 1 full-time and 2 part-time folks that are conducting approximately 2,000 site inspections a year out there. And we work very closely with the Lake County Building Department. Soil and Water has been instrumental in obtaining enterprise-wide software to help us track our construction projects. Every department was doing everything by paper up until a couple months ago, really, maybe a year ago, where a contractor would have to come in, they would have to visit my office, fill out an application, write a check, visit Jim's office, fill out the same application, write a check, building department, stormwater, all of us. And we have gone to a system-wide enterprise system that's working really well, by the way. So we don't quite have a one-stop electronic portal for folks to come in yet, but we're working on that. So we try to be super efficient. The district has needs. I just replaced the first our district vehicle last year, and the district vehicle I replaced was a 2004 Toyota Tacoma truck. So it's not like we're driving around out there in brand new vehicles. It was kind of an icon for us. It was recognizable. Everybody knew who we were when we were out there, but. So we are fairly efficient. I think Mike will tell you at the end of the year, he and I are counting pennies in all of our appropriation line items, and we're moving money back and forth. And we have a personal goal at the district where we try to raise at least $50,000 outside grant funding, working with foundations, working with other organizations or communities that are getting grants but want our assistance. We charge for those services now, and we move those funds at the end of the year to cover any deficits we have in the special fund. So my efforts here, and our most recent one program that we've been taking advantage of lately is the AmeriCorps. They're called the Watershed Corps now, but that basically provides the Soil and Water District with a full-time equivalent position for I don't have the exact match rate yet, but we've got 10,000 set aside for that. That is a full-time 1,900-hour position that is off of the books. We pay that one-time match, but they report to us like any other employee, and we develop their workload. They've got some training and some other activities that are mandatory through the AmeriCorps program, but it's been very successful for us. Over the years, we've hired two folks out of that program to become district employees. And it's just it's kind of like the perfect probationary period for folks that are coming out of school. That we're not their employer. They have no claims against us in any way. And, you know, most of their benefit is on the backside through tuition and loan reimbursement and things like that. It's been very successful for us, and that part of that is that $33,000 request. So what I'm really looking for, and I've got some more, you know, you talk to the IT department. Every time we talk to them, they tell us we need to upgrade our computers. We typically own our own computers. We don't come to the county for our computers. We own our own. We buy them through the IT department. You know, so these are all, we have all kinds of expenses that we don't come to the county for, but that's kind of how the district works. This $233,000 will get us back to our, I think it was 2020 funding. So we would eliminate that deficit and we're still going to have a match shadow following us from now until June. But in July, if you award us the 233, we'll be back at our 2020 funding level and kind of shore up the district. And with that, we don't believe we would have to come back to the commissioners for several years. I think I mentioned 3 in that letter. And that would allow us to take care of some staffing issues. I've got, you know, somebody on long-term leave right now. We're going to have to bring in somebody. We will use our district funds that are off the county books, move those funds in to cover a part-time employee to come in and cover some of that workload while that person's off. So we're kind of paying double there. Paying for the leave and then paying for somebody to come in and do the work. That's what those side funds are for, and we don't, like I said, we don't use the personnel liability funds for any of that. So this 233 would set us on a nice path, allow us to replace one more vehicle, not next year, but probably the following year, and kind of take care of our staffing situation. Like I said, I'm down to 4 full-time and 2 part-time. We might bring in somebody like 1 day a week or something like that, but we don't really anticipate increasing our salary line item, if at all possible. And, you know, we've got the $10,000 in there to cover that AmeriCorps position, which is like an extra full-time position for us. So it's a really efficient operation, I believe. And with that, I can entertain any questions.
Gentlemen?
Mr. President.
And correct, I'm not armed with up to the minute finances, but I do have some documents here, and
some high-level questions.
And we have some mic.
Why couldn't you, out of current funds, pay for this AmeriCorps position?
We have, but that gets harder and harder when we're working with a deficit in our special funds. So up until last year, they were paid out of our district fund. That $10,000 was paid out of our district fund. We just looked at that as a way to be sustainable. If we were working in this match shadow, the match shadow, we lost 23 through the county, so we lost almost 40,000 from match over the last 2 years. And so we just approached the commissioners to say, hey, we've got this super beneficial program for just under $10,000. We can establish a full-time position, and this position does do work on the county's erosion and sediment control rules. So they are doing inspections, assisting with plan review and things like that, to do some of the county's work as well as some of our work.
So I want to ask a serious and honest question here.
Sure.
If the commissioners were to bring you back to the 2020 level, not an extra $10,000 on top of it, could you retain that AmeriCorps employee and continue on?
We would. We think it's that valuable. Again, we're just trying to bring some long-term stability to the district. So, yes, we would continue with that program.
Jason is crying because people keep asking for more money.
I understand.
It's an emotional morning.
I've been watching some of these hearings, so.
Could you help us define your AmeriCorps? I know you're talking about the match, but it almost sounds like there's a double match. You put up 10,000, AmeriCorps pays the difference for this full-time person.
Correct.
So, and then I've said, if we bake in the 10,000, we get 10,000 match. So you're getting the match for the employee to stay.
Yes, sir.
We pay our, let's see, your local match, but then we get the state match on that 10,000.
Right.
That's credit, because it's outside money's coming to.
And it helps us make up for that 40 that we've been kind of reduced.
Talking about sustainability, I want to go back to, and you touched on it, I'm thrilled that you did, but I want to put a bigger spotlight on it. You know, you talked about the system-wide enterprise model for processing. You were the lead person, you were the lead agency on that in the beginning.
For like 20 years, yeah.
And I was thrilled that was a project that I could sink my teeth into and help get you across the finish line. You were there. That was.
We did. I wasn't the main implementer. I was kind of given to the stormwater department to implement and work with the county departments, but I've been advocating for that program.
Since 2002.
Yeah, and coordinating county meetings and bringing in vendors and for presentations and things for a very long time. And it's been great. I don't know if it's going to work for us forever, but compared to what we were doing, it's fantastic. I can actually go in and see when the building department was out on a site before me and things like that. It's fantastic.
And the value add, again, now I'm going to speak as a state licensed contractor. So you can say professor, I'll say state licensed contractor. We've all got our activities outside of being a commissioner that we bring those skills to this table. I can say as a contractor, it's amazing to watch the old process where you've got to make 23 copies of things and go to 23 different places and have 23 different checks and 23 different sign-offs. I remember the day when we were ready to do some demo work, and there was some theoretical stuff being talked about, and I remember, I'll just throw the name out there, George Davis, one of our local developers, said, hey, give us a contractor's eye, give us a developer's eye on this. And we were checking off boxes. He was prepared, he was thrilled. And I remember him asking a question while we had the design engineers that wrote the software on the phone. Hey, can it do this? Everybody looked at each other, the people on the phone, you could hear them shuffling and keying things in. We were all of the opinion it should be able to do this, but nobody ever tested it to do that. The level of insight. And again, I'm going to credit you, your department's leadership, in saying we need this. These small investments pay big dividends. You've indicated in your report, and just now today, you've gone from 4 full-time, you're from 6 down to 4. You know, you're supplementing with part-time. You're doing a great deal with very little, and there's a lot of challenges out there. Stormwater is not exactly, you know, I'm sorry, soil and water stormwater is not very sexy either. People tend to get a little cranky pants, but those are the kinds of challenges you're dealing with. State and federal agencies. You're dealing with local individuals, developers, that whole mix.
Yeah. We're primarily a landowner assistance operation.
And that's huge.
Yes. Well, thank you.
And well, at the end of the day, though, there are compliance issues that if those are not met in a timely way, projects stop or never start. There are substantial penalties for failure to comply. And candidly, I can honestly say I've been in a position to be able to bear witness.
Yes.
You work with people. If there's a non-compliance issue, you don't go out there with the stick. You go out there and say, hey, how can I help you?
Well, Chuck and Chuck's staff are very helpful with that too.
And when you say Chuck, you're talking about working closely with our prosecutor's
Yes, I am.
office. Again, another example of these departments do not work in isolation.
Correct.
So I just want to throw that out there. First, again, speaking for myself, the 33,000 seems a modest ask given the value that goes unseen. You've expressed what is seen.
And keep in mind, we're giving 41,000 back. We're going to pay you rent, and we're going to pay an indirect cost rate, which is our share of the services for other departments like the prosecutor and the engineer and whatever
Fair, which goes to
Right.
Commissioner Plechnik's point of what are our revenue
Right.
sources. To his point.
So we're saying 233, but we're actually talking about $190,000 to run a $500,000 office.
So see, we give
So-
you 10, you can give us, you get 20, and you can give us 10 back in rent. So we're all making money somehow.
25 in rent.
That's called fungibility, but yeah.
Right. So I can't, we're a very efficient department. I don't think anybody can point to us and say we're not very efficient. We may be one of the most efficient bang for the buck from a county appropriation level of departments out there. There are other departments that get state funding as well, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So it sounds like the only thing that's in, there may be a $10,000 gap. I'm hoping this was a persuasive discussion.
Well, I hear Mr. Donaldson say that he could efficiently run his department at the 2020 level. Of course, he would like an additional 10. I'm just concerned that we can't say yes to everything. We can't. And if it's possible to run the department at the
Right.
2020 level, then I think we have to seriously consider that. We have heard every single person come up to the microphone and tell us
I've heard them.
it is absolutely necessary and people will die if we don't do it. Well, guess what? If that's true for everything, oh well, we're done.
Wait.
Because we cannot say yes to everything. It's not humanly possible.
I understand.
So that's why I really want to hold the line here. And I asked Mr. Donaldson, and I think he answered honestly, even though it would have been easier for him to say, everyone's going to die if you don't give me $10,000 more. He responded, we can make do with the 2020 level, getting that additional state match. And so, I would be inclined to go in that direction. No disrespect or lack of love for your department. Your work is absolutely critical in working with our builders. But we're looking at so many, as I'll quote our budget director, I'll quote Commissioner Regovich, unprecedented requests. Everyone is
Understand.
requesting massive increases, and we cannot say yes to everything.
Okay.
So that's why my inclination, for whatever it may be worth to my colleagues, is okay, we restore you to your 2020 budget. You enjoy that state match. You've said that you would maintain the AmeriCorps person regardless. I think that allows your office to function.
Okay, but just so we're both understanding the same scenario, that 10,000, I'm going to lose 10,000 on match, so that's a $20,000 reduction, and we're going to pay for the AmeriCorps person, so that's $30,000.
That's true, but by the same token,
Reduction by the district.
you could say we could give you $100,000 and get a $200,000. I mean,
Sure,
So I hear you, but
Okay.
yeah.
How about 5, just to fully pay for the AmeriCorps person, and then, because we would get the state match on it, by October, we would have, it's going to become due in October if we went 5,000 on the AmeriCorps person.
The key point that and I think we may be saying the same thing, and we may have already worked it out, and I apologize, this may
okay.
have been worked out in your absence. If we appropriate the full 33,000,
Yes.
but we don't fund it, to Commissioner Plechnik's point, you're still got the paperwork in for the match. That match shadow would follow if there was a lack of funding that followed through. We're trying to hone every
Right.
detail, but you sound, and I believe I'm hearing you clearly, you're trying to capture the 10,000, which returns an additional 10,000, and it protects 10,000 that you have in internal funds.
Correct.
There's benefits upon benefits upon
Right.
benefits, including
But-
the
yeah.
AmeriCorps or whatever they're
And
calling themselves.
make no mistake, the restoring to 2020, the 233 is going to be very helpful. It'll take a lot of sweat off and some sleepless nights. We just think that AmeriCorps person brings an incredible value to the community. If you're saying it's 233, it's 233. But I'm just spitballing here for scenarios, trying to reduce the $30,000 loss there.
Well, we've just heard Mr. Donaldson say I could live with the 2020 level. Then he's like, well, at least fund the AmeriCorps person. I don't think we need to expend the full $33,000 here. I think it would be nice, but once again, it's the difference between nice and necessary.
I understand.
If it could save the taxpayer just this much, I could live with the 2020 plus 5, which fully funds this AmeriCorps person. I
It
just
does.
think we need to start being more critical on these requests to make sure that we can actually balance this budget in a sustainable way. As Mr. Maida says, we can't at every time say, well, we can't pay for it. Then the person comes up, we have a conversation, we agree to pay for everything. That is not a good precedent for us to be setting. And I understand that you have run your department very efficiently, and there's a difference between a department that has actually sustained a cut versus one that has had increases over time. And absolutely. So I'm grateful for that. But if my colleagues could live with 5,000 under the 33, with the 28, which restores them to their 2020 budget and fully pays for the AmeriCorps person with the state match, I can live with that. I just want to make sure that we're starting this more critical process of looking at these requests and saying what is absolutely necessary. We really have to do that because we are going to get more requests. The budget director is not wrong. We just have to make sure that we don't say yes to all of them because then the county is bankrupt.
Okay, so just so I understand, we're talking restore to 2020, which I believe was 233, 936, Mike will correct us, and then 5,000 for the AmeriCorps position. That would be wonderful.
If Dan's happy with that, then I believe it's warranted.
Completely. And I agree with everything you've said so far today, so.
Michael, you have direction?
Sure.
Okay, you're off microphone, but that was a
Mr.
sure.
Boyd, pass the tissues to Mike.
I'm just, never mind.
Never mind.
I have to excuse myself for a meeting in Eastlake if you, without objection.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, Dan, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
up and spending time with us. All right. Mr. Matus, did we check off all the boxes of the
Yep.
uncertainties?
I'll be updating the prosecutor, auditor, soil and water, and the public defenders.
And I believe we
And the revenue line.
We're going to have a discussion about that after, please, because I haven't got direction from two of you on that. So,
Well,
myself and Commissioner
No, I
Plesser.
understand. I want to be abundantly clear, though, that the numbers that you're using as far as revenue are based on past experiences.
And I'm being conservative. Yes, I am.
And I understand, but I don't want the word conservative to be perceived as code for you're hiding money. I'm going to call things for what it is. And I feel strongly that when I'm hearing from our business community, and I had permission to use Tony's name and his example, there are other business people in the county, from mom and pop shops to major industrial figures, that are deeply concerned that we are heading into very troubled economic times. I would not want to increase the anticipation of what our revenues are. I really think we should be looking at what our experts are saying, and I just don't want to put rose-colored glasses on. This is not the time to swing and miss. I just want to get that into the discussion. So Commissioner Regovich, I don't know if you want to add to that discussion, sir?
I would just like to say that, we're speculating on what the future holds, and there's a lot that goes with that, and I'll free to admit I'm not the one to give you an educated guess on what's going to happen. A lot has to do with what happens politically and what happens with our economy. So, and which seems to be all interrelated at this point. So, I appreciate, to call us a conservative budget. So, I'm used to under-promising and over-performing, so to speak.
Such as you said also prior to, as you said, Commissioner Pleshnik, as we will address the expenditures, we can also address the revenues. It's a two-way street. So that would be my recommendation. So.
I would want to sit with Mr. Matus, and he can probably more drill down on those numbers on what we anticipate. I do want to add too that, so the budget stabilization payroll stabilization, all that stuff took place because we were in trouble before. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Fair to
Yes, sir.
say? In 2012, it was a necessary thing where they did add a tax to fund those kind of things so that we can have these discussions now and have a little bit of a safety net. So I think that was, wise back then, and we have to make sure we're doing it the right way now. So I'm happy to have these discussions today and at this table.
And Mr. Matus, thank you for pointing out it's a two-way street. I regret not making that clear. You make an excellent point. And again, this is being respectful of Commissioner Plechnik's desire to make sure that we look at both sides of the equation. It does need to be balanced by law, and we need to be realistic on both sides of our discussions. Is there anything else to be discussed at this workshop regarding budgets?
I just want to
Sir.
thank the board.
Oh, come to the microphone and say that. We love hearing that being public.
I just want to thank the board very much for taking the time to consider all of this. I know you have some tough decisions, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the board? All right, thank you. If that is all that we have, then I'll look over to Summer and say thank you. We'll close this workshop, and you may conclude the recording.
Always looking toward the summer.